All right, well, free speech on the internet is what it is at stake at an upcoming Supreme Court case. The Supreme Court decided to take on this big case about whether or not the government can censor your speech through social media. This is a big one. We've been watching for it. I've been watching for weeks to see what they would do. They took the case. Now, it's not all good news. While they took the case, they said, but for now, the government still can censor social media. So let's talk about what this means, what's at stake here. To me, it is at the heart of what it means to be free in America. There's almost no bigger case at this point, whether or not we get to decide what's true or the government decides what's true.
And when you see around the world right now what's happening in the United Kingdom, I just went deep diving on research today about all of the censorship that's being foisted on journalists. We have journalists who are in Germany and other countries right now. They're being prosecuted for telling the truth. For people that are blogging, telling the truth about wars, they're being rounded up and prosecuted. They're being handed papers by the government. And it's really, really frightening. And so the heart of being American is freedom of speech.
Yes. So do we stand for it or don't we? I can't believe it has to go this far, but it is going to the courts. Now, this is the case where the Biden administration has been begging the courts to let them censor speech online. 2 states' attorneys general brought this federal case against the Biden administration and other government organizations. They accused them of censoring speech online around the pandemic. They made a very strong case. We've shown you proof. The government did do that. It told social media to censor information and downrank information about even true topics. The original ruling came in July from Judge Terry Doughty. He ruled that the Biden administration had violated First Amendment rights by working directly with social media to censor speech around COVID and other topics, and that they cannot do that anymore. The Biden administration appealed, and an appeals court mostly agreed with Judge Doughty and said, you still can't do that. So they took the case all the way to the Supreme Court, said, but we really want to. We really want to tell social media what to downrank and what to not allow if it goes against government mandated thought. And so now they took the case. But first they put a stay on the ruling. So that means that any ruling by the previous appeals court or by Judge Doughty cannot be enforced while the court takes the case. So for now, the government can do this. They can be working with social media to downrank information, even though, again, I won't drag it out because we've seen it in action. We've shown you the screenshots of government officials telling social media to censor even true speech about COVID, vaccine hesitation, vaccine adverse events, true stories about Hunter Biden, true stories about the war in Ukraine, so as to keep hold of the narrative of all of those things that keep them in power. If you want proof, go back to any of those segments that we
Just
did.
go to Congress a few months ago when they had RFK Jr. testifying, and it was a censorship hearing. Yeah. And they tried to censor him at the censorship hearing.
Right.
But
this is about social media. This is about how they worked with YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest. What else? TikTok. You name it, and they tried to reach out and downrank things that they did not like, and they gave justifications of like, this is true, for instance, about natural immunity, but we can't let people talk about natural immunity online because it promotes vaccine hesitancy.
I love that they were downranking Pinterest pins. Like that's what the Biden administration is spending their time on, Pinterest. So I don't like this recipe. Like someone in the Biden administration is like, this is not a good chili recipe. Like, let's downrank that pin.
That's not exactly what they did. But
I know. The platform Parler that stood up against it, they got canceled because Apple removed them. Amazon stopped hosting their information, so they just were completely wiped off the planet for not complying.
That was more around January 6th, though. This lawsuit is specifically
that's what they turned
COVID.
It into, but it was because there was misinformation about other things on there as well.
Oh,
but
misinformation,
that ultimately was the
word.
deciding factor.
Right, you're right. Now, the court says they may not hear this case until the spring of next year. Interestingly enough, the court issued a stay, but no opinion. So no justices said, well, yes, we think the government made its case on the stay that they need to keep doing this. They just issued the stay. No, nobody's speaking out on behalf. Nobody said why. Now, the government, in order to get a stay, has to say, we are harmed by this law, so take it off the books for now while we litigate it. And so in the dissent by 3 justices, I'm going to show it to you in a second, they said, the government's not being harmed by this. Like, how is that? It's such a high bar, and we don't know why this is happening. Now, here's the dissenting opinion, the 3 justices who say, we do not think they should get a stay, and we do think this is a very serious case, and we're taking this on, and we're going to stinking handle it. So it's Justice Alito, Justice Thomas, and Justice Gorsuch. Interesting what they say here about it is that government censorship of private speech is antithetical to our democratic form of government, and therefore today's decision is highly disturbing. The decision for the stay, which we get no opinion for. Like, given that the government was granted a stay, granted this right to continue to suppress our freedoms, shouldn't we have at least one justice who tells us why they did that? We get no opinion.
Like, you're allowing a violation of our First Amendment rights to go on while they get their shit together and figure this out and actually take up this case. I mean, I don't want to liken it to someone, like a violent criminal who you're letting out on bail. And it's kind of the same thing. And who knows how many lives actually could have been affected by what the Biden administration has done with social media and hiding information, whether it's around COVID or other things, right? Not allowing you to, maybe you did something to your body because of a vaccine.
No, disinformation campaigns that are labeled like anti-disinformation cause harm.
Yeah.
They do.
So in some ways, then it's kind of like a violent criminal getting out on bail and then then causing another offense while they're out on bail, basically.
Well, look at how the government argued this. This is how the government played their argument that they need a stay while they litigate. Look, it says the government claims that the injunction might prevent the president and senior officials who serve as his proxies from speaking to the matter on public concerns. Skip down past all this mumbo jumbo. The president himself is not subject to the injunction, though, and in any event, the injunction does not prevent any government official from speaking on any matter or from urging any entity or person to act in accordance with the government's view of responsible conduct. The injunction only applies when the government crosses the line and begins to coerce or control others exercising their free speech right. So does the government think that the First Amendment allows executive branch officials to engage in such conduct? Does it have plans for this to occur between now and when the case is decided? So see, here's a very important question. Does your right to free speech conflict with the government's right to speech? Because that's what they're arguing, is basically, it seems the government thinks that it's an either or situation. Either they tell you what to think and what to say, or you think for yourself and have free speech.
Like they have a different level.
It cannot be both.
Like a different standard for speech.
Well, yeah, what they're saying is that this law is keeping the president from and his proxies from speaking. But it's not. They can say whatever the F they want.
Unfettered, though. This is the thing, right? They want to be able to say what they want unfettered by criticism.
Yes.
But that's it. They want to be able to put out something, a CDC alert on Twitter, and not have community notes, people jump all over it and say that's actually not true.
Right.
Think about how many there were Twitter posts and Facebook posts by the federal government. They paid for these.
Yeah.
Right. Imagine if those were community noted and people said, actually, this is misinformation, what you're putting out here.
Right.
They want a protection, a shield. And they want to be able to speak publicly unfettered without criticism. Yeah,
this seems to me a task. Their argument, their basis of the argument seems to me an admission that they are liars because they cannot speak if the population is free to speak.
Right.
Uh-huh. So they're admitting we have to be free to lie.
Yeah.
Basically.
Right. Yeah, we need to be able to pull the wool over people's eyes, you know, and lie to people. That's the only way we're going to get this agenda through. You're seeing it in Canada. And by the way, in countries that don't have a First Amendment, I mean, this is what the World Economic Forum hates, right? Klaus Schwab hates the First Amendment. They hate these countries, the United States, that has this protection because Canada's getting rid of it, putting in all sorts of different layers of censorship in social media platforms, in journalism, and et cetera. Other countries throughout Europe are doing the same thing. The United Kingdom that doesn't have these same protections, doing the same thing.
Right.
Australia, New Zealand. And so the United States is like this,
hanging on by a thread, you guys. Like, we're hanging on by a thread for this essential freedom. This is what journalist Michael Schellenberger calls the censorship industrial complex. It's the government's way of concentrating censorship into their own hands, and it expands as they expand people who will let them do it, like social media, right? There's money in it. They want to do it. I remember like years ago, I was in this wine bar with some of my book club friends, and
wild night.
And this like
wild night
young
at the wine
girl
bar.
She was from Ireland, and she's like, "Oh, I just graduated from high school. I'm going to go work in New York City as a disinformation." And I was like, "That's a career now." Like, you get these young girls who want to be virtuous, and they will go and be like, "Oh yes, that's wrong. Let's not let people say that."
Was her name? What was her name? That was the Disinformation Governance Board.
Nina Jankowicz.
Nina Jankowicz. You're like, you're at a wine bar with Nina Jankowicz. This is a story I want to hear.
Right.
But she's like a mini Nina Jankowicz, basically.
Right. And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
I'm going to go to New York City and work in disinformation.
Just like this, young girl in a bar is trying to tell me how harmful it is that people speak freely on the internet. And, she's from Ireland and she's going to go do this career in New York City. And I'm like, we're screwed. Okay. So one of the plaintiffs in this case is Professor Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford. His lawyer had this to say about the Supreme Court taking up the case, breaking that the SCOTUS granted certificate and has also granted the stay motion without written explanation and a dissent from these three justices. She says, "We look forward to vindicating the First Amendment rights of our clients and all Americans in the nation's highest court." So she's got herself a case to argue in front of the Supreme Court for all of us. Now, the stay is concerning, but it's also positive. I want to take Michael Schellenberger's public post about this because I think it's interesting. He says the responsibility on the plaintiffs and the justices grows heavier. The plaintiffs will need to explain to the justices why we need to stop the government from using not just coercive measures, but all measures to motivate social media and the internet search companies from engaging in politically motivated censorship. As this person noted, the First Amendment protects free speech from forms of government interference that include but go far beyond coercion, because the First Amendment says that there shall be no law abridging the freedom of speech or the press. We reported here how Facebook executives went along with this because they were worried the Biden administration wouldn't protect their $2 billion business in Europe. But he points out, there's no guarantee that the Supreme Court will do the right thing here. And these media outlets, he mentions the New York Times, Washington Post, and NPR, the PBS, will persist with their conspiracy theory that the censorship industrial complex, is just not real. It didn't happen, that it's right-wing conspiracy. But as the case is debated in our highest court, attracting international attention and resulting in a ruling one way or the other, fewer and fewer people will get to believe them. So at this point, there's nothing we can do. We can't write our congressman. We can't do much about it. It's in the hands of the court. But at least we can, reject media that tells you that this is crazy talk. It's not. It's happening. And we can cross all fingers and toes and watch this case with bated breath.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.